It's WCW versus NWO World Tour. GamePro calls it one of the fall's hottest titles. Game Informer says it's the end-all, be-all of wrestling, featuring over 20 of WCW's and NWO's top wrestlers, a 4-player battle royal mode, and up to 40 moves per wrestler, including signature moves and foreign objects, all on Nintendo 64. Call now, 1-800-WCW-8661, or send $69.95 to the address on your screen. Also available wherever video games are sold.
And now, introducing the hottest new tag team in podcasting, George Feast, Johnny Clash, the Game Marks.
Hey everyone, this is Johnny Clash and George Feast, and together we're the Gaming Marks, and you're listening to the Game Marks Podcast. Each week on this podcast, we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly of wrestling video games, and we tell you if we would play it forever or future endeavor.
Clash, before we get into this game, I got to ask you one question. So, if I wanted to become a wrestler, if I wanted to go see great wrestlers, local talent, such as yourself, wrestle, could you maybe point me in the direction of where I would go?
I got the perfect place.
What's going on, Game Marks? It's your boy, Jack Tomlinson, the host of Creative Pro Wrestling's YouTube series, Cap TV, where every Monday night we bring you exclusive matches and content from the Creative Pro Wrestling Academy in Hicksville, New York, featuring some of your favorite Creative Pro Wrestling superstars like Chris Statlander, Bear Bronson, the Even Stevens, the Abominable CPA, Johnny Collins, Spite, and yours truly, Jack Tomlinson. Hi, how you doing? If you want to see all this, make sure you visit youtube.com/Creative Pro Wrestling to catch up on all things Cap TV today.
Oh man, I have so many great memories of playing this game. It is a classic in my library. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this game today, Johnny?
This game came out on November 30th, 1997, during the peak Monday Night Wars dominance of WCW over WWF at the time.
That's clutch. That's clutch time.
And this game is actually the second best-selling wrestling game ever, just behind No Mercy for N64.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and this was the start of the whole AKI Corp and THQ era, really.
Oh yeah, this is classic style of series of game. It's unreal. It's just like a staple in so many people's lives, and it really kind of set the benchmark for how gaming titles on the N64 should be in terms of controls. And I know many people still look back at this as a classic and a almost a standard of how to compare even modern titles for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. They always go back to this series of game.
Right, and this one, the reception was actually, this is easier than Warzone, which, as we know from playing it, was pretty hard.
Yeah,
you didn't have the finishers. There was all different buttons to press and combos, and it got. And
we'll be playing Warzone eventually, but man, this game.
It was just easy, and they introduced a new grappling system with the weak and the strong grapples. Which, if you held A, you would do the stronger grapple, which would be the bigger power moves. Yep,
and you had multiple options. You had a set of moves assigned to the A button and your directional, and you had a set of moves assigned to your B button with your directionals. And
yeah, I mean, it was endless after that.
Oh, yeah. And then, like you said before, the introduction of the specials being assigned to the joystick. You just one simple flick of the joystick when you have your special bar full, and that's it. There's no button codes. It's just a matter of time and who gets the advantage in the match and who really takes control.
Yeah, and even the taunts in the game were a little bit more than what we were used to, and they actually helped raise what they called the spirit for the finishers. Your meter on the bottom, which is kind of cool because
Ric Flair has his, slicking his hair, doing a little strut, slapping his shoulders. It's very, some of the capture of these they're
pretty well animated.
Yeah, they're very, very good. So what do you say? We want to do a little dive into the roster, and we'll tell everybody about where everybody sits and what the different factions are, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so for WCW, Mr. Lex Express himself, Lex Luger. You have the original Sting. You have the Giant. You have Scott Steiner. You have Rick Steiner.
Long-haired Scott Steiner, by the way.
Long hair, yeah, not Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. You have Ric Flair, Ultimo Dragon, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio Jr., Chris Steven Regal. All right, now let's go over to the NWO faction. So in NWO, it's not as robust of a roster that you'll see in later games, but here you have Hulk Hogan represented in both Hollywood and Real American style. You have the Imposter Sting, as shown by the quotation marks around his name. You have Buff Bagwell, Eric Bischoff, Scott Norton, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Six. So now we're in DOA wrestling, and a lot of these have real-world counterparts. So Sumo Joe, Kim Chi, Blackheart, Poochteka, Hannibal, Powder Keg, Dim Sum, Saladin, and Alibaba. So like we said before, a lot of these people have real-world counterparts that you weren't necessarily having the rights to use, so you kind of based it off of their looks and then kind of gave them different names. And then in Independent Union, you have Black Ninja, Shaolin, The Unknown, The Claw, Black Belt, Paco Loco, Shaman, and Master Fuji. And there were also, for each faction, there was one unlockable. So for WCW, you had DDP. For the NWO, you had Macho Man. For DOA, you got Wrath. And for Independent Union, you got Glacier. And in addition to that, there was also, once you played through one of the game modes with every faction, you had the option to play in what is called the Whole World Wrestling League. And once you did that, in both the heavyweight and cruiserweight versions, you had the options to unlock Joe Bruiser and Black Widow.
Joe Bruiser.
That's
my favorite wrestler.
Yeah, classic. Many classic matches involving Joe Bruiser in my childhood. Definitely not a ripoff off of any famous boxer. No copyright infringement had here. So what do you say? Let's do a little dive into the features. Anything we briefly touched on animations and stuff, but let's get a little bit deeper here. So in this game, there are 5 game modes. There is WCW versus NWO, which is a 5-on-5 elimination style. There's a versus, which is just your classic versus mode where you have several options, including, your single matches, your tag matches, battle royal. You have the league challenge, which is kind of the bread and butter, the closest thing that you'll get to a storyline in this game. Regular league, which is a round robin style with 16 people in teams, and your tournament style. So really, the league challenge is where you would go to unlock your characters, really get that feel for the game and how it was played. And then you also had the option to do tag style. So the options were either a single, a tag, or a cruiserweight in some of the categories.
Which I think some of the criticism from this game comes from the lack of depth of playability. There's no steel cage. There's no, you wanted more. Which they introduced later, obviously. Yeah. Other things they lacked. There was no creator wrestler, which we know is huge, and that's the first thing everyone does.
Oh yeah, that's a staple. In the game. Absolutely, in every game.
This didn't have it.
From WWE 2000 on, yeah, that was it. That was the staple.
This game had no entrances. So the game just started.
I didn't even realize that. You got your 5 seconds where they hop in the ring, they raise their arms, they do a little taunt, and then the match starts.
Right, with the generic music playing behind it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I know growing up, getting the new game, I wanted to see the new entrances. I wanted to see, the Undertaker come out on his motorcycle, for an example,
oh, yeah, absolutely. That was, you wanted to see how close they got to the real thing and how real it was.
Right. Would it have been that hard to just give me Sting dropping down from the ceiling? 2 seconds.
They have it in the opening. The opening video for this, they show that
there. Which, there's actually a bunch of animations in that opening video that just are never seen after that.
Yeah, that's true. I want a camera angle where the Giant is choke slamming someone through the ring. That's an actual opening animation. You get dropped right on the camera. That should be the camera angle for that finisher.
Yep, and there's also no story mode in this game, which a lot of these older games didn't have it. They just had tournaments and kind of a ranking system. I know Most WCW games had that. I don't think there was one with like a definitive story. And even some of the later WWE games only had the ranking system. I mean, Attitude had it. That's what Raw had, which you can't really complain about that. Stories, I get.
Yeah,
they take a lot. They're hard to put into this. This is just an N64 game.
For the most part, these were just glorified beat-em-ups. I mean,
right.
you really just played to... I guess the assumption was that you were going to play this with people, so that the majority of the game would be you playing with brothers and sisters, your friends, whoever else you can get to just kind of sit in front of the N64 back in 97 and just waste countless hours playing this game.
Right, and if you were a psychopath like me, you'd play by yourself and just make up storylines in your head as you go.
I'm pretty sure that was just like a staple for everybody. At one point, everybody did it. Whether you were doing it with action figures, you were doing it with video games, it's part of being a kid. It's having that wrestling imagination, making your own stables. It goes with the territory.
Right. The other criticism of this game was there's no championship belts anywhere.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird.
Nowhere to be found.
When you think of WCW, you think of that big gold belt. You think of Ric Flair holding it. You think of Hogan holding it with the NWO sprayed on it. They give you a trophy when you finish the tournament in this game, which is cool to see a big trophy, if you want to call it that. But
there's only so far that unlocks can go, I guess.
We want the big gold belt.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have loved to see the big gold belt spray painted with the NWO. Just for Hogan, like on his entrance.
I'm sure it would have been super pixely, but I would have taken it at this point.
I would have taken it. Give me all those polygons.
Speaking of super pixely, the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
You get games now. The crowd is wearing a different t-shirt for each person. Their bodies are different. Their faces are different. If you look at the EA Sports games now, each person in the crowd is wearing a different jersey or t-shirt,
and they all have unique face scans. Yeah,
right. This game, it's like they kind of animated the front row, kind of, and then the back
just like
is
a ramp of people.
White noise. It's just a blob.
It's just a ramp of a texture that moves back and forth. Yeah, it's definitely leaves a little bit to be desired here. But you know what? I feel like that's kind of the way that all the other games were too. From here on out, Revenge, No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000. Like I feel like none of those games, although the crowds did get better, none of them really were perfect. But I guess at the time, comparing to what we have now, it can't even be a competition. But for the times, I guess those were pretty revolutionary. Yeah. Like the No Mercy crowd were essentially just little animated PNGs going back and forth. They would wave a sign left to right. But
I think just because it's just so prominent that's the first thing you see is just this really bad crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, if they would have just darkened it a little bit, which I get. WCW was a brighter production, where WWF had the darker audience. WCW, everything was pretty bright.
Yeah, that's true.
So I get it that they were showing the crowd. They were giving it that kind of realistic Nitro feel. But I don't know.
I want to check something right now, so we're going to do live on the pod. I want to see, because there's a feature that is very prominent in other games, but for some reason I cannot remember, and I do not think we checked during our initial playthrough. So I'm going to check right now, live on the podcast. It is my duty to figure this out for the listeners, for the marks. This is happening. For actual Mark, this is happening. So I want to know, if I go out of the ring, did this game have the ability to grab weapons? Was this something that was put into the game? Yeah, you can. You can grab weapons. I have
a list.
Oh, please.
The weapons include a steel chair, which is square for some reason, half of a wooden folding table, which they all just lifted with ease and just swung. I mean, that's what I would do with it, not put a guy through it. A black baseball bat, obviously, for the stinger.
Yep,
and a barbed wire bat for Cactus Jack.
I would say eventually Cactus Jack, maybe?
Yeah, and for some reason, you pick it all out of a crowd.
Yeah, that was something that I always kind of wanted to know why. Like, I understand there's not really an option to get it. I mean, I guess you could go under the ring, but the animation limitations of the time. Maybe developers just thought it would be super funny to figure out,
which is fun,
to get weapons from the crowd. Maybe they were channeling some ECW. You never know.
The funny thing is here, WCW did not allow blood, and there's blood in the game, which you could turn on and off.
Yep, that is an option that you could turn on.
They didn't use many weapons like this either at this time.
And the blood in this game is just...
It looked like he was wearing a Vader mask.
Yeah,
just bright red.
I was saying, it's bright red. Like it's like candy apple red blood. It's just... I understand we're not going for super realism here, but just I think you got to go to the doctor for blood's that bright. There's something wrong.
Right. And like I said before, I was watching you play as Ric Flair versus William Regal, or Steven Regal, I should say. Things I noticed, Flair looked more like Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
If only he was wearing cowboy boots. He's very puffy. Every character in this game is just like smooth.
Yeah, there's no definition at all.
No definition,
That's
no muscles.
definitely something that you come to find in the later titles and really start to appreciate. Like, so
Right.
as we go through and we do more episodes through this series, I feel like that's one of the, like, we're going to constantly come back to this. Like, you know, eventually we're going to do NWO, WCW vs. NWO Revenge. We'll do WrestleMania 2000. We'll do No Mercy. There's even a chance that we may do the Japanese releases of the similar titles. For most of the games, there are Japanese equivalents that have predominantly Japanese rosters. If there's a request for those, just so maybe the marks who haven't had a chance to play that want to figure out and learn a little bit more about the international releases, that's totally fine. I'm totally down to do it. But I can't wait till we're at a point where we're doing No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000, and we can look back like, man.
Because we laugh at how those games looked, but comparing them to this, they looked like $1 million.
I actually had a friend of mine, when I told him that this is the first game that we were doing, said that is the worst wrestling game that was ever released on the N64. Why is that your first episode? And then I had to explain to him.
Because it sold 1.3 million copies in the U.S., and it was awarded the title of Fighting Game of the Year by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. So tell your friend to suck it.
The most prestigious academy. So what I had to explain was that not only in addition to all the awards that you so beautifully pointed out, Clash, this was the benchmark for all of the other games that he ended up loving.
Right.
Without World Tour, there is no Revenge. There is no WrestleMania 2000. There is no Mercy. And that's why we have to do this game. Because if we're going to play Simpsons, and we said it. You said it. You said it during the trailer. So you said it. So now we have to play it.
It's happening.
If we're playing the Simpsons wrestling game, which I believe has been voted as one of the worst games ever released of all time.
Come on.
I believe it says it on the Wikipedia page.
Did you play WrestleMania 21?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. Then
right,
hold that thought.
Story for a game for another episode. But it's one of those things where if we're going to play the best of the worst, then we're absolutely going to play the ones that start a gaming revolution. It's all, it's all relative. They all kind of talk in a weird way where, Warzone comes out. Warzone does, fairly well on both platforms. They take that, they release Attitude. Attitude comes out. It has a little bit better texture, a little bit better graphics. There's a little bit more features. That's exactly what happens here with World Tour going into Revenge, and that's pretty much what you see even now with the current releases. Each year that 2K releases a game, there's new features, there's additional additions to the roster, there's all these new soundtracks and entrances and more creative modes, and while some people feel like they're almost throwing too much, it's all a part of the times. You adjust and the game developers move along with the demands of, I really wish they had this, or if I was a wrestling fan and I wanted to play this game, what are the features that I would want to happen? And I look back at these games and I go, man, if this game only had this, or if I could get some of the features that I had in No Mercy in Revenge, like if I get the Revenge roster in No Mercy, I think that's like an award-winning game, because that Revenge roster,
it was stacked.
All right, but back to World Tour.
All right, so some things I noticed while playing.
Let's
The
hear.
count outside the ring, which typically games came with a 20 count back in the day. It's not
Yes.
abnormal. It was extremely fast.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You basically had 7 seconds to get back in the ring before it hit 20 and you were disqualified.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The selling, which it's kind of cool they added it. You knocked out Sting with a punch, which was pretty funny.
As who?
and-
This is important.
Was that Flair?
It was the meanest
Yeah.
right hook from Ric Flair. Just
It was
knocks thing out.
Yeah. It was... The animation on the selling was pretty funny.
And they actually keep that knockout animation all throughout this series. That and the blood cry when someone gets bloodied up. That's a staple from this game all the way through No Mercy, which is something that's really cool.
Yeah.
When you think
Just
about
twitch on the ground a little bit, it's fine.
Yeah, it's something it's really cool when you think about how long some of these animations and some of these features in the game stood the test of time over multiple games.
Right, and then you were working Steven Regal's head a little bit, and he was selling it. He kind of looks like Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yep.
He
You
kind of
hunch over, they kind of grab the ear
turtles
a
up
little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny because they lose half their body when they do that.
Oh yeah, and the clipping was the other thing that I noticed. I don't know if you noticed it. There were several points where I was, as Ric Flair, putting people in the figure four, and as they wiggle towards the ropes, their head is very clearly passing through the rope, but I'm not getting a rope break alert yet because I'm pretty sure the alert happens below the head. So as soon as your shoulder
Hands
gets
and feet,
close
I
to
think.
the rope, that's pretty much when you get it. I don't know where that hitbox is. I'm sure that there's a way to find it, but just going off the gameplay, it feels like it's a little bit out there.
Which Ric Flair in this game, like I said, he looked like Dusty Rhodes, his body, but his face, when we zoomed in a little bit, he actually looked like Jerry Briscoe. And I noticed everyone's faces are just like flat.
Yeah, there's only definition is nose, really.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how to appreciate how far these games have come, but
Right, which you think back to this game and then to No Mercy, like what they were able to put into it. Like they must have put so much time into No Mercy as the last one of this type of game, because even like the turnbuckle pads in this game, they're just little triangles.
Oh, it's all about polygons. How many polygons are you going to add to your model to get details, and how much extra time are you going to put to save down your textures, and how much detail you're going to be into textures? Because
Which makes you think, did they know they had the capability of doing all this stuff and they just rushed it?
yeah,
Were they trying to just get the game out?
maybe they didn't know the full capabilities of what the N64 was capable of, and later on for other titles, they actually had to release a RAM expansion pack for the N64 for certain titles, and if you had that and you went back and played older games, they actually improved the graphics and the processing speed of the game, because now it was handling less textures at a higher rate of processing, and some of the animations that when your first playthrough, maybe a little laggy, maybe a little slow, not as clean, you go back and you play them now with this RAM expansion. It's insane. You're like, oh, this is like a brand new game.
Yeah, which is crazy that back then, like a console was able to do that.
I will say this: N64 will go down in my book as one of the greatest consoles of all time. And this
100%.
controller, I know it gets a lot of flack for its weird design. I actually think it's one of the more comfortable and interesting controllers to hold.
Very comfortable.
For the buttons. I'm not going to say that this is better or worse than a PlayStation controller, because it's different needs. You don't have to hit as many buttons as frequently on the N64 as you would playing an Xbox, playing a PlayStation. You very rarely would need your C buttons other than cameras or a quick button press here or there. Your bread and butter, pretty much where you're living, is that D-pad, that joystick, and that A and B button. And you have easy access to your left and rights. I think that it's probably one of the best controllers.
Yeah, it's simple. That's it. That's why N64 was what it was, because the games were great. They're like these games. We still play them today, and the controller was just so simple. They were just so easy to give your friend and be like, "Hey, A, B, done. Play me."
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
someone comes over like, "Oh, I don't know how to play. How do you grapple the guy?" I'm like, "Oh, you got to hold this." It's impossible.
Yeah. So where are you on the replayability factor of WCW versus NWO World Tour?
Okay, so our rating system, which I think we should explain since this is the first time we're using it.
Okay.
Play it forever or future endeavor. So play it forever. Would you come back? Would you play it again? Would you recommend it? Would you put some time into it? Or future endeavor. Could you just leave it? Could you say, all right, I played this, I feel nostalgic, and you tuck it back into a box under your bed. So, for me, this game, it's going to be a little tough, but I'm going to say future endeavor.
Wow. Okay.
And my reason, which I don't hate the game, I love this game to death because it's a big part of my childhood, but that's the only reason why I'm playing it right now, because there is revenge, because there is WrestleMania 2000, because there is No Mercy. If I want to play a good WCW game, I'm going to play Revenge. I'm not going to play this.
I agree with you. And this is probably going to be one of the few times that I will actually say that I am also going to future endeavor this for the same exact reason. I am in 100% agreement with you. I think that this is a great game for the time. It is a great game for what it was able to do for the future of wrestling video games. But going back to it now, there are so many features that you got used to from playing Revenge, playing WrestleMania 2000, playing No Mercy that just aren't here. They hadn't been programmed into the game. They hadn't even been thought of yet. So I have to agree with you and say that this is something that I will tuck it back in, and maybe in another 5 to 10 years, I will think nostalgically about unlocking Wrath for the first time and pick
maybe
it
on
back
our
up.
anniversary show or something.
Yeah, or you never know. There's going to be some bonus content where maybe we'll do a tournament here or there with some other people, and maybe we'll have a couple brewskis and just kind of hang out, and we'll find out.
Oh, we weren't doing that now?
You're not supposed to say that on the podcast while we're recording. The mics are live.
Yeah, I rated it explicit.
No, okay. All right, that's fine. So yeah, so that's our rating system. That's where we sit on the game. And I don't know. Do we put a bow on it? Is that it? Are we calling that our first episode?
I think we put a bow on it, but I also want to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah,
I want to know if they future endeavor it as well, or if they will play it forever.
That's what we want to know right now. We want to hear what you thought about this game, what your experience was with this game. Did you have this game as a kid? Did you have another title? Was there another game that you were like, this was everything. This was my go-to game when I was a kid, and I can't wait for you guys to play this. Because if you have a title, I had a friend when we announced that we were doing this podcast, reached out and said that if you don't play this, more or less you're dead to me. And it was a game that I had never even heard of before. So I can't wait to play that game because it's for a very, very retro console, and it's a game a title that I've never even heard of. So I'm looking forward to playing the things that we have played and revisiting those, but also looking forward to experiencing new games that, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years old that I've never got to experience and that you never got to experience.
Right. And I can't wait to go on this journey with you, my arch nemesis.
Oh, yeah. We are partners in this podcast, Mr. Clash, but when it comes to video games, yeah, we're arch nemesis.
Clash at the feast.
Oh, it's happening. So, because we just announced that we were doing this tournament and, another little peek behind the curtain, there were some technical difficulties. We weren't able to actually start the tournament, but consider this the official announcement that on the next title that we play, it is on.
It is on, and be on the lookout for extra content as well on our new Twitch channel.
Oh, yes. Make sure to follow us on all social media accounts. We are at GameMarksPod. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. As Clash mentioned before, we are on Twitch. We're going to be putting together some live content, hopefully reaching out to have some special guests, both on live shows and on future episodes. Let us know if there's someone that, obviously we can't get The Rock to be on the show, which would it would be great.
If
there's, you want to reach out. You're the one with the pulls here.
Okay.
But if there's people
Dear
that you know,
Mr. Johnson,
I loved you in San Andreas. Please return my phone call.
Was great. Did you catch Sean William Scott?
Walk Hard was a great remake. But yeah, let us know if there's people that you want us to try to interact with. In the teaser, Clash pointed out that we're not playing the TNA video game until Dixie Carter responds to his message. If you got connections to Dixie Carter, you want her to be on the podcast. Listen, here, I'm not saying that we should tweet her a lot, but
we're gonna.
Maybe we should tweet her a lot, and maybe we'll get some traction. She'll be like, "Oh, what's this Game Marks podcast? I got to get on there. They're talking about my TNA video game. Oh, I want to give some feedback."
Oh, and there's so much I want to talk about with that game.
See, that's a game that I've never played, so I'm excited.
God. All right, well, we'll get there. With
that being said, I think it is time for us to wrap up our first episode. I want to thank you, Mr. Clash, for sitting down for over a half hour with me and talking about a game that was revolutionary for N64 and all other consoles. I want to thank the Marks. Are we calling them the Marks? Are we the Marks? Are we all Marks?
We're all Marks.
What this is? All right, we're all Marks here. And yeah, I guess I will let you wrap this up and put a nice pretty bow on our first episode.
Well, I want to thank my good friends at Space Zamboni for featuring us on their website, which gave us a little kickstart. They have a ton of different content like gaming, animation, skits. Give them a visit at spacezamboni.com. They are good friends of mine. They do comics. These are very talented dudes, and I feel like we're going to be working with them a lot in the future to bring you guys exclusive stuff, so look out for that. And yeah, George, why don't you tell them what we're doing next week on the pod?
You want to know what we're doing next week? I can't wait to tell you, because 2 episodes in, we're already doing a double shot episode. We are going to be covering WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game, and WWF In Your House. So these games came out within a year of each other. They're very, very similar. I believe the biggest difference between these 2 games mainly is their roster. The art style, the gameplay is heavily influenced by the fighting games of the early 90s, so like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, all those big titles. So I'm very excited to have our first official round of Clash at the Feast. There were some technical difficulties the first time we did it, so now that we actually are able to iron out all the details and get it to work, I'm very excited to find out who will take the first round of this ridiculous fighting tournament that we started on our podcast. So make sure to listen each week to find out if myself or Clash take that week's title.
Yeah. Game on. Keep playing.
All right. Again, we are at Game Marks Pod on all social media. And yeah, thanks for coming and hang out with us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.